Hey, before you click away, I want you to stick with me for just the first 60 seconds because what I'm about to say might be the most accurately descriptive thing you've heard about yourself in a while. You ever sit in a group of people, a dinner table, a work meeting, a party, and feel like you're watching the whole thing from slightly outside of it? Like there's a conversation happening, and then there's the conversation about the conversation playing out in your head simultaneously? Or you've ever been called too sensitive, too serious, too in your head, not as a compliment. And some part of you thought, am I broken? You're not broken. What you are is a deep thinker. And in a world that mostly rewards fast thinking, loud confidence, and surface level socializing, being a deep thinker can feel like a curse. But I promise you, it is one of the rarest and most powerful ways a human mind can work. Today, we're going to walk through 10 signs that you are one of these people, and I want you to pay attention. Not just to confirm something you already suspected, but because understanding how your mind works is the first step to using it properly. Let's get into it. Sign number one, you ask why. Long after everyone else has moved on, cut to slightly wider shot, more animated, most people, when they get an answer, stop asking questions. Deep thinkers? They treat every answer like it's just the door to a hallway full of more doors. Your coworker explains how a decision was made at work. Everyone nods. You're sitting there thinking, but why was that the goal in the first place? And who decided that goal mattered? And what assumption is buried underneath all of this? This isn't you being difficult. This is called first principles thinking, and it's one of the most valuable cognitive skills a person can have. Elon Musk talks about it. So does Aristotle. So does every great scientist who ever lived. The thing is, most people reason by analogy. They look at how things have been done and work from there. Deep thinkers reason from the ground up. They want to understand the foundation, not just the structure sitting on top of it. If you've ever frustrated a teacher, a boss, or a parent by asking, but why does it work that way? And you genuinely wanted to know, not just to push back, that's a sign. You're not a troublemaker. You're a thinker. Sign number two, you feel emotions. More intensely and more consciously, lean forward slightly, softer tone. Here's one that surprises people. Deep thinking and deep feeling are not opposites. In fact, research in psychology suggests they often go hand in hand. Deep thinkers tend to score high on something called sensory processing sensitivity. It means your nervous system picks up more nuance, more subtlety, more emotional texture in a room. You notice when someone's smile doesn't quite reach their eyes. You feel a shift in the energy of a conversation before anyone else registers it. And because you think deeply, you process your emotions differently too. You don't just feel something and move on, you examine it, you turn it over, you want to understand where it came from and what it means. This can be exhausting, honestly. You might spend a whole evening replaying a 2-minute conversation because something felt slightly off and you can't let it go. Sound familiar? But here's the gift inside the burden. People who process emotions as consciously are often the ones who grow the most from hard experiences. You don't just survive difficulty, you extract meaning from it. That is rare. That is powerful. Sign number three, you struggle with small talk. And it's not shyness. Slight smile, a bit of dry humor. Okay, this one is going to land hard for some of you. You're at a barbecue. Someone walks up and says, so, how about this weather? And inside, you die a little. Not because you're antisocial, not because you're arrogant, but because your brain is already running on a deeper frequency, and small talk feels like being asked to manually breathe. It draws attention to something that should be automatic, and suddenly you don't know how to do it naturally. Deep thinkers don't dislike people. They dislike shallow conversations. The moment a discussion turns to something with actual stakes, someone's fears, a philosophical question, a real problem that needs solving, you light up. You lean in. You have a lot to say. The psychologist Elaine Aron, who pioneered research on highly sensitive people, found that deep processors crave what she called meaningful connection, conversations that actually go somewhere. Networking events can feel like purgatory, but a 2-hour dinner where you really get to know someone, you leave energized. If this is you, you're not bad at socializing. You're just playing the wrong game at the wrong table. Sign number 4, you're constantly connecting things that seem unrelated, more animated, enthusiastic. A deep thinker's mind is essentially a pattern recognition machine running 24/7. You read something about chaos theory and physics and immediately think, wait, that sounds exactly like how social media trends work. Or you hear a lyric in a song and it suddenly unlocks an idea you've been trying to articulate for months. Or someone describes a relationship problem and you immediately see the same structure in a historical event you learned about in school. This is called integrative thinking, the ability to hold two seemingly unrelated things in mind simultaneously and find the hidden thread between them. It's why a lot of deep thinkers end up being creative, even if they don't think of themselves that way. Creativity isn't about making things out of nothing. It's about connecting existing things in ways nobody else has seen yet. Steve Jobs famously said creativity is just connecting things. Einstein played violin and talked about how music and physics, to him, came from the same place. Leonardo da Vinci couldn't separate art from engineering. If you're the person in the room who says, this reminds me of, and people look at you like you just made a wild leap, you might just be seeing a connection they can't see yet. Keep looking. Sign number 5, you're deeply uncomfortable with hypocrisy, including your own, slightly more serious direct. Most people can tolerate a certain level of inconsistency in themselves and others. It's called cognitive dissonance, and the human brain is actually built to paper over it pretty quickly. Deep thinkers don't get that luxury. You will lie awake at night thinking about something you said 3 years ago that contradicted what you claim to believe. You will notice, immediately and uncomfortably, when someone you admire does something that doesn't line up with who they say they are. And you will hold yourself to a standard that, honestly, can feel crushing sometimes. This isn't perfectionism in the neurotic sense. It's a deep commitment to intellectual and moral integrity. You genuinely believe that what you say and what you do should be the same thing. And when they're not, in yourself or others, it registers as a kind of alarm. The downside? This can make you harder on yourself than you deserve. It can make you lose respect for people too quickly, before you've given them room to be human. But the upside is that people who hold themselves to this standard are the ones who actually change, who grow, who become more trustworthy over time. Not because they're perfect, but because they care about the gap between where they are and where they said they'd be. Sign number 6, decision making is hard. Even for small things, relaxed, a bit self-deprecating. All right, I see you. You spent 45 minutes choosing what to have for lunch today. Deep thinkers famously can struggle with decisions. And it's not indecisiveness in the way people usually mean it. It's that you genuinely see more of the picture than most people. When you're deciding something, you're not just weighing two options. You're running through second and third order consequences. You're considering what this choice says about you. You're thinking about who else might be affected. You're accounting for unknowns. And you're doing all of this simultaneously. Barry Schwartz wrote a whole book called The Paradox of Choice about how having more options, or in this case, more awareness, doesn't lead to better outcomes. It leads to paralysis. Deep thinkers know this feeling intimately. The good news is this: when deep thinkers do finally make a decision, it tends to be a good one. Your due diligence is real. You've stress tested the options in ways others haven't. You just need to learn, and this is a skill, to know when you've thought enough and when more thinking is just anxiety wearing a disguise. Sign number 7, you need alone time, not to escape, but to process, calm, slightly introspective. Let me clear something up right now because this gets misunderstood constantly. Deep thinkers often need a lot of solitude. Not because they're depressed, not because they're antisocial, not because something is wrong, but because their mind is essentially a high-performance processor, and it needs time to run without interruption. Think of it this way. During the day, information is coming in constantly. Conversations, stimuli, ideas, emotions, problems. For a deep thinker, all of that gets logged, tagged, and queued. It doesn't just disappear. And solitude is when you finally get to actually process the cue. This is why deep thinkers often have their best ideas in the shower, on a long drive, lying in bed at 1 a.m. when they should be asleep. Not because those settings are magical, but because those are the rare moments when new input stops and the background processor finally gets to run. If you've ever needed to take a walk alone to figure out how you feel about something, or you come home from a social event and need hours of quiet to recharge, that's not a flaw. That's just your operating system. And once you understand it, you can work with it instead of against it. Sign number 8, you question things most people accept as given, more philosophical but still accessible. Here's one that can get deep thinkers into trouble in certain environments. You don't really do received wisdom. You're not great at accepting things just because that's how it's always been done, or everyone knows that, or that's just common sense. Common sense to you is just an invitation to investigate. This can look like contrarianism, but there's a real difference between being contrarian, disagreeing to stand out or to feel smart, and being a genuine independent thinker who just can't accept something as true until they've looked under the hood. Deep thinkers are often the first to spot when a consensus is wrong. They're the ones who look at a well established industry practice and say, wait, has anyone actually tested whether this works? They're the ones who notice that the emperor has no clothes before anyone else will say it out loud. The philosopher Bertrand Russell said that most people would rather die than think, and many of them do. That's dark, but there's something real in it. Thinking genuinely hard about things you've taken for granted is uncomfortable work. Most people avoid it. Deep thinkers can't seem to stop doing it, even when it would be easier not to. Sign number 9, you have a rich inner life. That's difficult to share. Gentle, warm, slightly vulnerable. This one is probably the loneliest part of being a deep thinker, and I want to sit with it for a second. Inside your mind, there is a whole world. There are ideas you've been developing for years. There are observations about people and life that feel profound to you. There are questions you're genuinely wrestling with about meaning, about what matters, about who you are and who you're becoming. And when you try to share that world, it often doesn't translate. The words come out and they sound smaller than what was in your head. Or people change the subject. Or they nod politely, but you can tell they didn't quite land in the same place. This is one of the things that makes deep thinkers vulnerable to loneliness. Not the absence of people, but the feeling of not being fully met by the people around them. If you've ever felt that ache of having something important inside you that you couldn't quite get out, or that nobody quite understood, I want you to know that feeling is the symptom of having a genuinely rich inner life. It's not a sign that you're weird or broken. It's a sign that you need the right people. And the right people are out there. They're often the other people watching videos like this one. Sign number 10, you're drawn to meaning, sometimes at the expense of practicality, building toward the close, reflective and energizing. Last one. And this might be the most defining sign of all. Deep thinkers are fundamentally meaning-seeking creatures. It's not enough for something to work. You want to know why it matters. It's not enough to be successful by conventional measures. You want to feel like your life is about something. This shows up in your career, where you'd rather struggle doing work that means something than succeed at something hollow. It shows up in your relationships, where you're willing to let go of comfortable connections that don't have any real depth to them. It shows up in how you spend your free time, reading, thinking, exploring ideas, creating things, often in ways that have no obvious practical payoff. Viktor Frankl, the psychiatrist who survived the Nazi concentration camps and wrote Man's Search for Meaning, argued that the primary human drive isn't pleasure or power, it's meaning. And deep thinkers feel that pull more intensely than most. The practical cost is real. You might have taken longer to figure out your career path. You might have walked away from relationships or opportunities that looked great on paper. You might have been called impractical, idealistic, or too philosophical. But here's what I want you to hold on to. In a world that is increasingly optimized for speed, distraction, and surface level everything, the ability to think deeply, to sit with complexity, to ask what things actually mean, is not a liability. It is a superpower. So, how many of those landed for you? If you recognized yourself in 5 or more of those signs, there's something I want you to hear clearly. You are not too much. You are not broken. You are not behind. You are operating with a mind that runs deeper than most active, and the world needs that desperately. The deep thinkers are the ones who solve hard problems, who ask the uncomfortable questions, who stay in the room when the conversation gets complicated instead of changing the subject, who hold complexity without collapsing it into something easy. Your job isn't to think less, it's to find the right places, the right people, and the right problems for how your mind actually works. If this video resonated with you, do me a favor and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Leave a comment below with the sign that hit you hardest. I read every single one of them, genuinely. And if you want to go deeper on any of this, because of course you do, you're a deep thinker, I have a full playlist linked right here on building your cognitive strengths, dealing with overthinking, and finding your people. Thanks for thinking with me today. I'll see you in the next one. Don't forget subscribe, like the video, and turn on notifications.